Chapter 105. The clinic wouldn't release them. Abin Fizzle ordered them held. Abin was rushing home from an American business trip. They both knew what his return would mean. Julieta arrived before Abin. Her prime minister, a bearded giant with a gun belt, accompanied her, and 25 rebel commandos as well. Queen Julieta advised Ehaj Fizzle to turn over the young couple. She threatened an international incident. The old sultan followed her logic. Many times he'd warned his son that redheads were nothing but trouble. "Get them away from here at once," he told Julieta. "I'll handle my boy. Shalom." She recuperated at Julieta's palace, except for their eardrums. Healing was swift. At a desk in their room, Queen G was no prude. Bernard wrote Lee Cherie a letter. Impatient, she read over his shoulder. He was describing a dream or hallucination. He wrote that when he and Lee Cherie fell to the floor right before the blast, he experienced the sensation that they'd fallen into the camel pack. "All the time that I was unconscious," he wrote, "I was dreaming. I guess I was dreaming that we had escaped through the package of camels, that we went inside of it and caught the camel and rode it bareback to the oasis." She took the pad from him. "We had to ride it fast," she wrote, "because we were naked and the sun was hot. Redheads burn easily." Bernard recovered paper and pen. "Yes," he wrote, "that's right. Well, we made it to the oasis where we rested by the waterhole in the shade of the palms." Lee Cherie yanked the pad back. "There was a frog in the pool, and we wondered how a frog got out there in the middle of the desert." Bernard grabbed the pad. "How did you know that?" It was her turn. "We ate fresh dates. You made a droll remark about dates being a laxative. Some Bedouins came through, and they gave us an old camel blanket. One blanket between us. We wrapped in it. It was tan," wrote Bernard. He was so excited that the pen shook. "With a few stripes of blue. How do you know this? I had the same dream. It seemed more real than a dream. A hallucination? At dusk we made love. You started it by sucking my toes. Your toes are cute." And then the dates took effect. The princess laughed. "You wondered if there was a men's room over at the pyramid. We decided to avoid pyramids, except as pedestals. We slept by the pool. How do you know this? How do we know it? Could we both have had the exact same dream? Was it a dream then?" They were staring at one another in silent disbelief, trembling a little, when Julieta entered. There would have been no point in her knocking first. Julieta brought a cable from Tilly. It was news about Max. The disappearance and resurrection of his daughter had been too much for the king. His valve had gone bingo. "I bet you that you are soon okay," Tilly had told him when he slumped. "2 will get you 5. "I am not," answered Max. He'd won. For the time being, Bernard and Lee Cherie forgot about the camel pack and whether, at the instant of explosion, it had sheltered them from death. They'd have the last quarter of the 20th century, and more, perhaps, to bother their noodles with that one. Chapter 106. King Max was buried in Reno. Far from blackberries, Bernard and Lee Cherie attended the funeral. Later, that put Tilly on the plane for Europe. Julieta had named her manager of the National Opera. "I going to be a working girl," said Tilly. "Oh, spaghetti-o." Bernard and Lee Cherie flew to Seattle. Arriving at the Furstenberg Barcelona house, they discovered that it had been engulfed by blackberry vines. Chuck, who still lived over the garage, had hacked a tunnel to the front door. Chuck tunneled through the brambles in order to watch game shows on Max's old Magnavox. The taxi driver offered to take Bernard and Lee Cherie to a hotel. They refused. They entered the tunnel by moonlight. They set up their lives in the house, in the thorns and berries. They seldom went out except to go shopping. They enjoyed supermarkets, pharmacies, vegetable stands, tobacco shops, value marts, meat-o-ramas, family shoe centers, buddy squirrel nuts and candies, appliance stores. Whenever they looked, something momentous was happening. Wherever they looked, something momentous was happening. They made love at all hours in every corner of the house. Sometimes Chuck had to step over them to get to the TV. But having acquired a taste for solitude, each of them spent days separate and alone. Lee Cherie in the attic, Bernard in the pantry. Funny how we think of romance as always involving two, when the romance of solitude can be ever so much more delicious and intense. Alone, the world offers itself freely to us. To be unmasked, it has no choice. Naturally, it rained a lot. The famous Seattle rain. If love was going to stay, it had better be prepared to get its feet wet. Lee Cherie took up easel painting. Still lifes. She wasn't bad. Bernard carried around wooden matches. Everybody needs a hobby, he explained. Once to the east, above the mountains, a strange glow, science fictioned across the sky. There were flashing lights of every color but one. When Bernard and Lee Cherie were certain that the thing had passed, they told each other that they were proud to be redheads, that they would be ready when the showdown came. With her share of Max's winnings, Lee Cherie purchased powerful hearing aids. Hers was pink, Bernard's was black. Each hearing aid was about the size of a camel pack. They were made from plastic and tended to squeak. They were adorable. Even with aids, their hearing was only partially restored. Still, they were convinced that they could hear the chipmunk at the center of the earth. They could tell that the chipmunk was running smoothly now. Its wheel spun free and easy. Actually, its wheel spun easy and free. Epilogue. Well, we made it through the night. I have to hand it to the Remington SL3. It hung in there, in spite of what must have been, for a typewriter of its class, exceedingly primitive conditions. I'll never write another novel on an electric typewriter. I'd rather use a sharp stick and a little pile of dog shit. But the Remington, although too pseudo-sophisticated for my taste, is an object, after all. And wasn't the possibility of a breakthrough in relations between animate and inanimate objects one of the subjects of this book? Yes, this is the book that revealed the purpose of the moon. And while it may not have disclosed exactly what happened to the golden ball, it stated plainly why the question needed to be raised. Objecthood was by no means our only major theme. There was, for example, the matter of the evolution of the individual, how evolving is not accomplished for a person by nature or society, but is the central dimension of a personal drama to which nature and society are but spectators. Wasn't it made clear that civilization is not an end in itself, but a theater or a gymnasium in which the evolving individual finds facilities for practice? And when it comes to themes, how about but wait a minute, hold on, I've been trapped. This is the very kind of analytical, after-the-fact goose gunk the Remington SL3 cuts its teeth on. No wonder it's still yammering away despite a lack of fuel, despite the red enamel house paint that's run down into its guts. Enough already. I'm gonna pull its plug. Now, written in handwriting, he's gotten off the Remington SL3, and the last few pages of the novel are handwritten. Parentheses. Ha! What's the matter, Rem? Got a speech impediment? Close parentheses. And finish up in the longhand. Not that my handwriting is any aesthetic improvement. It resembles the nasty scrawls chalked on alley walls by Mongolian monster boys. But it will encourage me to be brief. And, really, what else is there to say? If that pissant typewriter's got me in a situation where I must make a closing remark. Well, then I guess in all fairness, I should say one more thing about making love stay. When the mystery of the connection goes, love goes. It's that simple. This suggests that it isn't love that is so important to us, but the mystery itself. The love connection may be merely a device to put us in contact with the mystery, and we long for love to last so that the ecstasy of being near the mystery will last. It is contrary to the nature of mystery to stand still. Yet it's always there, somewhere, a world on the other side of the mirror or the camel pack. A promise in the next pair of eyes that smile at us. We glimpse it when we stand still. The romance of new love, the romance of solitude, the romance of objecthood, the romance of ancient pyramids and distant stars are means of making contact with the mystery. When it comes to perpetuating it, however, I got no advice, but I can and will remind you of two of the most important facts I know. 1, everything is part of it. 2, it's never too late to have a happy childhood.